I know it's been a while since I've stated this, but just so we're all clear, it's still very fun to watch bizarre and decrepit OVAs you've never heard of late into the night and totally alone and in terrible quality. Hope I've set the record straight on this one. I made the setup too complicated last time. I apologize. Look, I'm casting a wide net with the whole VHS thing so as not to exclude anime I think contain the ill-defined but strongly felt spirit I'm really looking for. That of lifting up a rock in the woods and finding a micro-ecosphere thriving on its underside. By the nature of anime holding intrinsic appeal to niche interest groups in parts like these, you get cases where source material is totally eclipsed by the anime. Just on the matter of scale, there are trillions of, say, manga in the world that will slip through the cracks, but there are only so many anime. There are whole communities of people who will covet the most nothing burger dog water shelf fodder scraped up from Japan's animation puppy mill meat grinder, just because it's there. I would know, I include myself. And that's why you can watch pretty much any anime with a few clicks and keystrokes. A frog's holler from the likely singular drove of foreign scholastic book fair equivalent type children's literature fanatics, or 80s magazine column enthusiasts, or who the hell are these old ass motherfuckers? And while these weirdos are all probably cool, a task of that caliber would be insurmountable, pushed instead to the recesses of onloanarchive.org EPUBs and subreddits with 3 active users at a time. And these cases have a way of unfurling upon progressively closer inspection. One name begets 5 names, which each beget their own 5 names, and before you know it, you've racked up a dozen new media entertainment experiences for your bottomless backlog that will make you look cool in your weird little subcultural bubbles for whom social capital is derived from your knowledge of, like, the Ghost in the Shell PS2 game or whatever. Seriously though, it's kind of magical in the most gay nerd way to go from, oh, this cover looks cool, to, yeah, I mean, give it a few years, but I could see myself getting a tattoo of this character from the uncollected magazine-only spin-off of the terribly obscure game the OVA is based on. Fake example, but you get my point. So yeah, VHS gets you in the door, mostly, and now that you're here, allow me to be the seed money in your proverbial tip jar, girl, so I can discover you like 30-some-odd short-form, not necessarily original video anime from the vague window of VHS's heyday. Take a few you like, learn even more about them than I did, tell someone in your life about what you learned. That's what it's all about. Yeah, Cypher the Video, woo! Cypher the Video, yahoo! I know everyone knows Cypher the Video. I think I first saw it like a decade ago in a hotel room at an anime convention. Core experience, the less said about it the better. And damn it, I've loved Cypher the Video all this time, and it really is the perfect encapsulation of how fun it is to be utterly baffled by something you found at random, like, say, in your YouTube recommendations. Because even if someone tries to brief you on the Cypher the Video lore, okay, so it's like about a girl who likes a former child star who goes to school with her, and the child star has a twin brother who is also a child star. But which one is which? Nothing can truly prepare you for the onslaught of barely answerable whys you're about to get Tetsuo migraine beamed into your frontal cortex. Its prefaceless MTV programming block format and frankly unprecedented decision to write the entire thing in English.
Super good.
Because it's set in America.
Well, I've been in this world since I was real small, so I think I could understand all the troubles and joys he went through.
Are just 2 of the things that make Cypher the Video one of those great for-the-books failures that someone needed to make because nobody else was willing to in order to confirm the self-evident hypothesis there's a reason nobody does things the way that Cypher the Video does them. And yet in turn, it's one of those prophetic distillations of an archetype of 1980s aesthetics that hadn't yet been fully codified. I've talked about Cecilia Condit, Candide, You Decides, possibly in Michigan from this perspective. Every formal flourish and necessary limitation happens to be so keyed into our image of the era as anachronism that it feels more like a pastiche than a genuine relic. And with Cypher, it's all just one big non-stop, up-tempo, Times Square, big hair, flamboyant costume, glitzy party. Even its very existence is endemic to being a product of 80s excess. Oh, this manga's popular with girls 9 to 14. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. Let's just rush a damn videotape out to market for him. What? Adaptation? Hell no, it's just gonna be a bunch of shit. We'll license a bunch of American pop songs, it'll be great. And damn it, it is great. It'd be a delight if these little vignetted windows into anime adaptations that could have been were more common over trying to adapt a single arc into 40 to 90 minutes or something. The thesis of Cypher the Video is that America kicks ass and American popular culture kicks ass, and Budweiser is fucking awesome. And these twins are hot as shit! How can you pick just one? And that can be driven home without a traditional narrative. Okay, there's something I've been holding in my back pocket. Some of you may have suspected this. I feel like I've never seen a piece of media set in New York as fixated on the World Trade Center as Cypher the Video. Before Y2K. And you better goddamn believe it, baby. The twins are literally the 9/11 brothers!
I'm the one with the antenna.
That astonishing clip is from the making of, formatted as a CNN special, but like in the same way that Kikassia Behind the Scenes is formatted like a Ken Burns documentary. And it's interesting how unabashedly it refers to MTV by name as its primary touchstone.
It will be an interview produced in the MTV style.
You see how seriously they took the assignment with this OVA. The backgrounds are literally one-to-one with photos they took. And of course the most interesting part is the recording process, using all local English speakers who are presumably amateur or non-actor. Cypher the Video's eager, studious approach to a cornball concept makes it impossible to dislike in my eyes, and it shines bright and exuberant in my heart. Bury me with a thumb drive that contains only let's hear it for the boy.mov. Thank you for all of you. Yeah, this is good. This is fun. See, let's just check out some more good old-fashioned platonically ideal OVAs here. The real crowd pleasers before we get into the nightmare shit. You're welcome to think of these introductory titles as a sort of counterintelligence measure, because after I made that first OVA video, I started getting Patreon DMs and comments and emails saying, "Hey Hazel, I run a college anime club, and because of your video, I screened Dragon's Heaven and Fight Geeks Are One and Butt Attacker whatever, and I absolutely cannot have anything else like that on my conscience. You can't just blast that on an unsuspecting audience. Show them California Crisis Gun Salvo or something." I mean, the definition of a crowd pleaser. Amidst the ever-shifting, trend-chasing seasonal anime spanning the medium's history, hit him with a curveball. For its 45-minute runtime, I was completely bought into the affluent city pop Eijin Suzuki beachside party, the other coast's 1980s excess propaganda. California Crisis has continued to elude audiences, it seems, or at least in the bygone age in which I used a computer. I don't recall seeing it shared around very often, which is surprising. It's so visually driven, committed to its set of very rigidly defined stylistic parameters that it should be perfect for getting creditlessly posted to vintage anime aesthetic blogs or Instagram accounts or whatever. Get it together, guys! But yeah, I don't know, maybe it commits to its style a little too hard. There's a reason Suzuki never illustrated like people. His is a style suited toward the inorganic, starkly outlined, two-tone lights and shadows and all. It's kind of harsh when applied to human characters, but California Crisis knows all the money shots are the parts where all you're seeing are the automobiles. Those vehicles are just as, if not more important anyway. It invited me to see it through the eyes of a car perv, and I liked what I saw. Like, damn, it really is just cool as hell to see animated cars drive fast as shit. It's a testament to this thing's wiles that I was bought in at all, when, after all, the real California Crisis is living in Southern California itself. Yeah, Yeah, buddy, I've been there. But nah, main girl finds a mysterious orb, main guy's gotta drive her around to keep it safe from the nefarious activity encroaching on them. Unlike Cypher, as a certified California girl, you can tell because I'm a PNW transplant now, I do have some authority on California Crisis's California. So while I never encountered any Los Angeles egg situations for the couple years I was living in Southern California, California Crisis is, like Suzuki's art, in line with the postcard in-and-out t-shirt image of California that is frankly better off as truer in the cultural memory than reality. Like, okay, why do you think so many tourism photos of LA are just the tops of palm trees against a blue sky? Because when you crane your neck back down, all you see through the afterimage of the beating sun is a perpetually ablaze congested 12-lane freeway where all the exits lead to beaches caked in a seagull shit patina, where any given street contains no public restrooms but like 4 plastic surgeon offices boasting discounts on Spider-Man No Way Home themed Brazilian butt lifts. Despite its safely, comfortably skin-deep setting, California Crisis gets some of the little details spot on. I mean, who in SoCal doesn't make the monthly family trip out for dinner at Oh my god, they've got spaghetti Real Italia. If you foresee your audience having some manner of trauma response to the Californian landscapes they're in, but yearn for the warm embrace of summer air, perhaps instead you can take the X train. Basically an hour of Rintaro and the boys flexing the hell all over you. Middle finger Banana Boys t-shirt. Regular guy develops a psychic link with a malicious, electrified ghost train, chaos ensues, you get what's going on. Very proto-Denpa. It's a sweaty OVA, dog day afternoon sweaty, employing perpetually rolled up sleeves, blaring cicadas, and sweltering underlighting to immerse you in the sticky, humid summer. This shit looks like a Goofy movie, bro. I know that's a cracked thing to say, but that's a compliment. I could see the downtime to crazy shit ratio being off for some people, but even when there's nothing flashy going on, the staging is clever and the presentation is fresh, and if you ask me, it should all be worth it to even the most addled of brains for that insane final scene. Although even by the end I couldn't understand why the train sounded like Gamera. If that's a mystery that won't keep you up at night, Take the X Train would make a solid double feature with Rintaro's Download. There we go. I got my requisite double feature recommendation. That might be record time. Radio City is the second studio album by American rock group Big Star. Radio City Fantasy is mostly a bunch of abstract, very pretty music videos with some interstitial mood pieces about budding relationships, and in that really feels like the kind of thing you'd see projected at a DIY show or a moderately hip bar, and you'd go, what is this? To the bartender, and the bartender would go, I don't know, sorry, and you go, for sure dude, no worries, and you think for a split second about asking him to like ask a manager or another bartender or whoever it was that put that on, but you don't want to look like the asshole who's more interested in whatever bullshit is on for ambiance than enjoying the people you came with or whatever, so you unnecessarily discreetly film a second on your phone, which is like way less normal behavior, so that when you get home, you can compare against internet anime databases and ask your internet acquaintances if they have, quote, sauce, but you realize upon returning home, your shitty phone camera took a second to start filming, so what you're left with is a 1-second video of your shoes and no, quote, sauce. Honestly, I'm a little embarrassed I'm doing the projector thing. Like 3 minutes after I said that, I dropped my very heavy projector directly onto my foot. That sound makes it seem worse than it was. Nothing was damaged. Like California Crisis, over here in my hermetically sealed anime internet blackout era, it seems even too obscure for that. For now. That's funny because it's objectively star-studded, but understatedly so to the standards and priorities of English-speaking anime weirdos. I'm sorry, but I'm about to do some gratuitous name-dropping. Here are the standouts. Yoshitaka Amano, yep, Final Fantasy guy, was one of 3 credited character designers. Takeshi Shudo, yeah, the Pokemon guy, yeah, the Minky Momo guy, yeah, the alcohol and tranquilizers guy. Adapted the OVA from a story he wrote when he was like 18. Dude was an insanely prolific gun for hire in the first half of the 80s especially. It's fun to see one of his babies occasionally crop up in his filmography like this. Radio City Fantasy revels in both vivid imagination and quiet melancholy, which makes for a compelling atmosphere that I've found is a signature of Shudo's work. But one name devoid of direct involvement with the production looms large. What you see here is not from Radio City Fantasy, but instead an animated segment of Morio Agata's film Boku wa Tenshi Janayo, or I'm No Angel, a 1977 adaptation of a 71 manga by the name of Red Colored Elegy, by fellow alt manga magazine Garo alum Seiichi Hayashi. That's the name looming large. His phantasmagoric style feels like a major inspirational keystone for all of Radio City Fantasy's eclecticism. See also Red Colored Elegy's core theme of rapidly urbanizing city life's strain on a relationship. Hayashi's Red Colored Elegy follows a man on the mangaka to animator spectrum and his tribulations cohabitating with his girlfriend as they struggle to make a living wage amidst all their ennui. It's a grounded story told in a heavily stylized and impressionistic way, and it's a fucking smash. A vivid snapshot of a time in the history of anime and manga that mostly passed non-neurotically, self-motivatedly educated or college student weebs by. It's essential reading if you care about this stuff, doubly so with the indispensable essay from Ryan Holmberg present in the most recent paperback editions. It's so good I don't even mind that the manga's still flopped. If it's missed you all this time, that's your homework for the month. By the way, it's possible you know Seiichi Hayashi for album art he did for the band Lamp. If you ask me, the 77 film too should be considered an unimpeachable classic in the ranks of guys like Obayashi's playfully strange outings. For a manga so impressionistic, an impressionistic film was in order, split down the middle between legit production and home movie. Temporality, location, color, and emotion, hell, the camera itself are free-flowing, grounded most by its score, which Agata, primarily a songwriter, composed himself. The track named after the manga itself, Sekishoku Elegy, is his most famous work to date, eclipsing even the film within the zeitgeist. To finally circle back, director Agata's band Virgin Verses composed the music for Radio City Fantasy, and while I'm No Angel's soundtrack is aggressively 70s, Radio City Fantasies is aggressively 80s. I think I'm No Angel's rocks, but my music taste has been getting increasingly old guy with a greasy ponytail as of late. Agata's got this intense crooning affectation, and if you're into like Happy End, that's one of Haruomi Hosono's early bands, you're gonna be into it, I think. Meanwhile, Radio City Fantasy's running the gamut of 80s future cliche. Yep, there's that miserable tone every guitar solo recorded in the 80s had. Not for me. Greasy ponytail guy Hazel wouldn't approve.
Everything is true in your dreams.
To further opacify this video's concept, here comes one you may not even consider an OVA at all, which is fine by me because the Flying Luna Clipper is unique in all other respects as well, a literal one-of-a-kind experience. I couldn't tell this thing's unlikely story better than it's already been told, spearheaded by artist and sicko Iko Ono, made more or less entirely with MSX computer hardware in the mid to late 80s. Every single second of it, you're just in awe. It is actually moving and functioning like a marathon runner with a concrete block tied to their waist, rounding the final turn before crossing the finish line. And by complete coincidence, my marathon has become a bit of an America World Tour. Would you believe we start in lovely, lovely Florida, where the Flying Luna Clipper makes its maiden voyage, and then it's right off to Honolulu. And like Cypher...
Where are you from, Mr. Yukio? I'm from Nome, in Alaska.
Oh my God.
In the burgeoning years, that's like a set phrase for me at this point, of a medium or format opening up, everything made is inherently experimental, right? Everyone had to independently figure out the right way to do everything before it could become standardized. One work leans too heavy in one direction, another to the other, while the most creative sculpt with all of the new tools the medium adds to their repertoire. That's especially true of the personal computer boom, which sort of democratized that process to anyone who could afford one of those beasts. I'm always thinking about the desert scene from the Museum of Anything Goes that's just a plane with a wave warp, baby. One of the first things I ever made with 3ds Max in a 3D modeling class I took in high school by a woefully unprepared art teacher. I should make it clear, the Flying Luna Clipper isn't so much a one-of-a-kind experience, because it's entirely made on 1980s computer hardware, but for its execution therein, its herky-jerky structure and characters that are so ugly it rocks juxtaposed against these beautiful locales, every reason why it strikes those who are discovering it for the first time in ocean and some 40 years removed as something half fuzzy familiar, half totally alien. There were all manner of other enterprising artists/software nerds animating with computers like the Amiga, including Dick Van fucking Dyke. I have the pass, I can say it. Although we worked with 3D CGI rather than the largely 2D stuff I'm looking at here.
Mr. Van Dyke said he had Amiga bumper stickers on his car and regularly drove to Los Angeles from his home in Malibu to attend meetings of the small but active local users group. "We're rabid," he said.
That's adorable. I know though, snore, cringe old man, bowling alley screen dance.
Give a fuck what you heard, yeah, fuck what you...
Get him out of here. You want lost media mystery. If you're an American watching this video and know anything about non-IBM PC compatible, I'm probably using that term wrong, I'm sorry, home computer animations of the 80s and 90s, God what a ridiculous set of qualifiers. Perhaps it's the bevy of internet mystery esoterica that occasionally float to the surface of your little niche internet communities. Enough ink has been spilled about the likes of the Paper Rad Touchstone Nanny Lynn video already, but needless to say,
we sing our song to welcome you to Teddy Bear Land, where nothing ever happens and life is very bland. For all we do is sing our Teddy welcome song all day. Bouncing on our giant bed's the only game we play.
I love it. These Amiga-made animations created by weird woke grandma Lynn Oakberg sort of epitomize the disconnected feeling everything I'm talking about here has.
Chick ran to his favorite spot.
Animations aren't timed to the narration that sounds like it's done entirely in one take, which creates this weird temporal thing. It's like I can feel the inconsistency of the totally seasick cinematic temporality. As time contracts and expands, the narration remains the same pace. I don't know.
And in came a new character.
What do you think exposure to Nanny Lynn videos does to a child's developing brain? God, fuck this big sister bullshit. I'm not your damn mom. I need to be cultivating the spirit of weird woke grandma. I need to be like the B. Arthur of talking about anime on the internet. This one's also fun, but it's total stolen valor. A few years back, my friend Thor introduced me to Pernod de Perno, apologies to the Netherlands, this beyond scuffed Dutch, also Amiga-made, animated television program made by some butthead college grads who stuffed it full of obscenity. Like, I'm serious, there are so many breasts and penises in this thing, it's nuts. The American mind reels, but that's normal if you were there. And it's a feat, those Euro-ass designs and rudimentary 3D locales allow for a far greater range of motion than the borderline Kamishibai Flying Luna Clipper, which draws attention to Luna Clipper's respective sensibilities drawn from director Iko Ono's illustrated covers for MSX magazine. So on the 80s computer animated production spectrum, Luna Clipper is on a pole mostly of its own, further away but still not fully removed from the lingering fear any cut could carry you to a photo of a real dead body or coordinates to a decommissioned fallout bunker with a real dead body inside. Instead, its playful energy comes off as quaintly alien to those without context for what its technical springboards were. Alright, if you didn't know about the Flying Luna Clipper, now you know about the Flying Luna Clipper. Hopefully I was able to use all that other stuff to illustrate the reasons it appeals to me. Be sure to check out Ono's short from the year after while you're in its world also. These videos are inevitably predicated on the fact that I am a woman of the age where most everyone I know had that one VHS or DVD growing up that might as well have only existed to them. Amongst the family's assortment of otherwise pretty normal home video staples, there was one outlier. Might have come from a relative on Easter, maybe a neighbor friend passed it along, or it was a rental that was never returned, that radiated solidly incorrect energy but became core to their childhood regardless. When you're young, you really have no reason but your still embryonic instinct alone to understand when what you're rewatching for the 100th time is not part of the same artistic canon as The Wizard of Oz or even like Rugrats in Paris. Catnapped seems like it was probably that for a few kids in the year 2000 who had no idea they were the luckiest kids on Earth. Because even though it was released in the States by Pioneer for the anime crowd, the cover art is ambiguous in that inadvertently leads Aunt Fran to think it's related to The Little Mermaid kind of way, and really the OVA itself is too. It's Triangle staff helmed by Takashi Nakamura, an animator director on Akira, and I kind of do see how that's the case, so it's got a distinct feel that doesn't necessarily scream anime. There are like no human adults, the lip flap is articulate, dimensionality is at the forefront of the motion. By whatever broken means Take the X Train reminds me of a Goofy movie or whatever the hell, Catnapped is like a definitely more normal Raggedy Ann and Andy a musical adventure. They share that whimsy to the point of terror atmosphere where you start to get overwhelmed by just how little there is to ground you to reality after a certain point, and by how much goddamn design there is, and the amount of detail within its bevy of set pieces. It's dizzying. And check out these like physical props in the intro and outro. No one asked for that. Except me. Catnapped is pretty easy to recommend on sheer wow factor, even if the plot sidetracks itself almost as much as I do. But if you're watching this, you're probably fine with that, and if nothing else, the main antagonist's side boob game will surely make up for its flaws. See, what are we learning here? Cats are always good subject matter. I'm always happy to see a cat. Except this ugly piece. The rest of them though, it's like a cheat code. Need an angle, need an audience, put a cat in it. Do you think we'd all still have this church-like anime-core reverence for Nekojiro if it was called Dogjiro? No hate to dogs or anything, it's not a competition. Plus, it's only a matter of time before I talk about Junkers Come Here on this broadcast. You can always count on What's Michael. A title so universally funny, anytime anyone talks about What's Michael, a new wave of people go, what do you mean there's a manga called What's Michael? And just as they're digesting the highly philosophical phraseology of the title, they go, and it's about a wacky orange cat? Yes, for the unfamiliar, Garfield and Heathcliff have had a not-so-secret third all along. Dark Horse was putting that comic out in like 97, come on, get with the times. Before it was adapted into a TV anime in 88, 1985 saw a What's Michael OVA that plays out a lot like those early Garfield cartoons. Little croppings of shorts that are vaguely stitched together. Funny little orange cat is tried and true, always what the people want. You want mundane little musings about the trials and tribulations of cat ownership? You want to hear a story about a cat that plays baseball? What's Michael's got you, dude? Reliable cat. Can one even trust a cat who drinks without a state-issued ID so easily? Yes, of course, that's fucking badass. Hello, Orane, the cat player. What to even say about this? It must be seen to be believed. priorities dialed in, these muted backgrounds splashed with color contrast the scribbly little characters, and cats especially. Look at these freaky little fucks. This is what cats actually look like. What's Michael is just a platonic ideal, state-run media, a perfectly primed Hollywood phony. Every perfect cute little picture of a kitty cat you see online was preceded by 1,000 that look like this. Like, what is this shape? Oh, it's guitar shape. Of course. The cat player is not a cat that plays, it is one who plays the cat. Okay, God, this is starting to sound like Postal or something. Oh, the singing cats drink alcohol. Oh, they turn the singing cats into instruments. Music has that right kind of sagely whimsy about it, Janssen-esque old man included. I mean, if there were a classics of game style, classics of anime YouTube channel, this would have been its inaugural upload. Just so we're clear, that wasn't the stealth announcement of a real Classics of Anime channel. I don't have the kind of time, I'm sorry. Where are the sound effects? Gosh, the song started. A rule in and of itself, every rule has its exception. You can't count on Dark Cat for a goddamn anything. But the Dark Cats are the best thing about Dark Cat. A horror OVA I don't think anybody has any fondness for. It's just dull and limp until the dub either goes off the rails and drops the F-slur. Always startles a laugh out of me. I'm sorry, I grew up during the Bush administration.
What a pussy, let's get out of here.
Asshole.
Or a funny cartoon kitty cat shows up to remind you that nobody has ever successfully made house cats scary. Check it out, his hair is supposed to resemble cat ears.
It's our job to educate and guide even a loser like him.
Couldn't make house cats scary either, but it also knew not to try, so it butchers them. Oh man, like some of the ones I've talked about in the past, it's pretty much just Alien, although this one understands Alien's pacing just a bit better than the others, and you can actually tell the characters apart. I swear I don't remember a single thing about Hell Target other than the funny subtitles. You're not gonna mistake Muscle Dick America Man for the writer of Evil Bong 3.
Alright, so in that situation, Brendan, I'm gonna kill you.
Their associated traits are established and expounded upon in engaging rhythms, and it's occurring to me that I'm praising this OVA for being coherent, so let me just cut the chase and say it's got a pretty good scare per minute ratio, even though I've come to realize pink goop is horror anime's equivalent to horror films just throwing some buckets of blood at the wall. I get it though, specificity is expensive, and who doesn't love just throwing blood at a wall? Live action and animated outings alike handle the tight corridored space station setting like two idiot brothers who know their Xbox will get taken away if they don't rigidly obey the half-hour on, half-hour off clause their mother gave them. See Root Search, there's not even a cat in this one. When the key art is this badass, you know it's gonna disappoint. The big scary alien actually does have a painted look that's evocative enough to what's on the tin, so that's cool. And like, the plot is pretty much the same as all the other animalians out there, so Root Search's distinguishing factors are a great score, Bartleby Montsinclair main guy, narrowly avoided tentacle shenanigans, Wait a minute, I know that little bitch. Gakko no Kaidan, or School Ghost Stories, is the social phenomenon turned media cycle like 8 separate media franchises centered on a confluence of school-related urban legends, usually 7. Lighthearted fun to cool adults and terrifying to stupid children, these stories range from a painting is looking at you to sometimes there's an extra 13th stair in the hallway. Usually they throw in teke teke and kuchisake onna for good measure, and Hanako needs no introduction, I'm sure. They didn't even need to come up with a story about this one, all it needs is acknowledgement. Due in no small part to a 90s occult boom, this wide array of legends became a rich vein for all manner of home media releases, which themselves occasionally became standalone, beloved media franchises of their own. See none other than legendary horror franchise Ju-on, whose first feature, a 70-minute V-cinema smash that deserves more love, is partially derived from director Takashi Shimizu's previous work on a Gakko no Kaidan compilation film, namely the shorts Karasumi and All of These Fours. Interesting how by the time of its theatrical rendition, it retained virtually zero of the school legend stuff. On the other hand, most befall a fate similar to Hontou ni atta Gakko Kaidan, a quick cheapie thrown to the dogs and immediately discarded, most famous as a mislead in the search for deep web Guro anime Saki Sanobashi.
I told you I'm going to be fine. Why are you still crying? Because his pajamas are gay.
School ghost anime seem to have an unfortunate track record with
Hello, sinner.
getting slotted into a niche through nothing of its own doing. For whatever reason, maybe the Saki reason even, people perceive this as far more elusive or rare than it actually is. One of the only rips of this movie loses audio in the second half, which is why I checked for a physical copy online, expecting them to be pricey, and immediately found and bought one for laughably cheap. So here it is on my second channel. 2 years ago. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if I did a shitty job, but I know it's complete at least. Regrettably, not very much to say about this thing. I like the art style, it's quite cute, expectedly not scary in the slightest, and 100% all ages, just to set the record straight. But it pales in comparison to the anomaly by the name of Gakko no Yurei. The elegiac cover art gives way to an equally elegiac anthology series. And I don't know, something about this anime doesn't feel real. Like, I can look at it directly, but my brain auto-composites it onto a CRT in the background of another movie. Like, how are these not the cutscenes from a Sega Saturn game? Major charm point for me. The mushy backgrounds and mushy characters, prefab stories, a generally bad soundtrack, how often can you even say that? And unconventional editing choices denote a production strapped for cash and time, yet its spirit is undeterred. It's got an enthusiastic energy to it. You can tell because half the dialogue is screaming. Lots of little moments where they really go for it. Dramatic underlighting, some bold compositions. I like all the blood red skies, and the best scares have this quaintly effective quality to them. I vote this as the next to get proliferated under the pretense it's a still from a rumored non-existent anime with a nonsense title. The episodes can vary in art style, and whether or not that's intentional or a necessity, what? Yeah, baby, in the second episode, Gakko no Yurei reveals its true nature, an anime live-action hybrid. The anthology begins switching freely between the two mediums from segment to segment, and the left and right hemispheres of my brain collide, and this is now fully my shit. I'm quick to discard any OVAs that run over about 2 hours in total for these videos for the sake of my own time, but I watched all 5 hours of this shit. A lot of my observations on the anime sequences apply to the live action, similar collusion of gusto and limitation leading to an end product that's equally charming and disquieting. I unsurprisingly like these parts the most as a digital video perv, and it's fun to see the scope of these segments increase from episode to episode. By the end, it's pretty much TV quality. Sorta makes you proud. Look at how far they've come. The last one, labeled Shin Gakko no Yurei, even marks the transition to Digipaint. Here I thought the traditional stuff looked mushy. The stories center on high school, junior high, and elementary school, but the art feels like a child filter. Yet I can't picture it scaring anyone over the age of 12, although there's a delightful abandon in how it depicts child death. There was a brief window of time in my adolescence where my parents thought they could afford a premium cable package, and I did a lot of exploring into channels that would play the racy shit with nervous curiosity. Past the modern schlock slashers and violent crime television, the programming that disturbed me most and left left the biggest impact on me were the ones that registered in my developing mind as counter to what my brain knew movies and television were. Despite failure to be authentically scary, my senses heightened to ensure I wouldn't be caught doing something I wasn't supposed to. I was enshrouded by this threatening pocket atmosphere. Stuff to this day I've never learned the name of, remembered only through stark images or snippets of dialogue. And also the 2010 Suicide Girls found footage movie. Another one that popped into my head while watching Gakko no Yurei is a show I actually can't identify. One of those shows that reenacts paranormal encounters. I thought it was Discovery Channel's A Haunting originally, but looking at episodes, there's way less VFX than I remember, and that's the part that's clearest in my memory. They both try so hard to be grounded, yet they're so dramatized, like filmmaking simulacra. I think it's mostly the Aqua Teen Hunger Force-ass VFX, actually, while the low-grade digital video ties the room together. I remember my heart actually racing, distraught that I couldn't comprehend the images before me. And watching this series gave me warm, nostalgic flickerings of that feeling, like a candle about to light my hair on fire. Anime has a hard time being scary, and that's okay. I have a hard time with my lefts and rights, and the people in my life still love me. So I guess I kind of let my guard down while watching these and was primed to fall prey to the most cursed OVA I've seen to date. The Otona no Dowa series of OVAs aim to retell classic, already scary stories with the liberties taken to ensure they've got maximum freaky as shit factor. There's one containing 3 adaptations of Japanese folklore and one with 3 Brothers Grimm stories. The Japanese one's dull, but Yonimo Osoroshi Grimm Dowa was made by a bunch of alien nutjobs and needs to be seized by some government authority. The CG cover art is a wild tone setter. None of this is CG, but all the art is about as evil. The Bluebeard installment is like your REM state conceptualization of Digipaint, but if all you knew about anime was the "is this the episode where he lost his house" post, it's wonky but not unprecedented outside the garishly over-designed color-coded backgrounds. The other two, I would like to introduce you to Hansel and Gretel. There's a primal sort of energy propelling this one. Grotesque, distorted expressions, everyone's panting and sweating all the time, eyes bulge, screams harrow, dusk is perpetual. The colored line art is an early Digipaint classic. There's also a lot of interesting layout work. Characters are often framed through tree branches, doorways, lattices. I watched this in some kind of paralytic stupor, as if it was less an anime and more an assailant that had snuck into my television to psychically torment me. That one's my favorite, but Cinderella, the third story, is the show stealer with this scuffed Eastern European worker and parasite-ass rigged paper theater animation. Its characters and expressionistic backgrounds are all densely laden with texture, fabric patterns, stained glass, marble. It's often overwhelming to take it all in as a standard definition production. Texture archaeologists, get on this. Do you think this is an okay place to do the promo stuff? Quick pointer to my Patreon. This video's probably gonna get demonetized and shit's rough lately. I know that's true of pretty much literally actually everybody, so no pressure. Okay, there we go, we're synced now. Even Seattle's own Scarecrow Video needs to secure $1.8 million in order to remain open into the coming years. An initiative they've deemed Save Our Scarecrow. I've called this place my favorite in the city, and their archive has been a pretty invaluable resource for these videos. It's not about me, but if Scarecrow shutters its operations, my videos will get marginally worse. It's been a joy to work on their anime spotlights every other month, which, hey, I've actually been doing all year as a fun little side thing, and I'm quite proud of the work we did on the one that should be out around when this video comes out. It's not this one, ignore this one. I'm shooting this in early August. The October one is a condensed breakdown of the Heisei malaise, a term I use for a set of trends that emerged throughout the late 90s and into the aughts, and how they intersect with a bevy of major cultural moments through the era. You may recognize some of these ideas and titles from a viral tweet that went around sharing a list I compiled a few years ago. This was partially made up of scraps from a video I wanted to make around that time that I probably naively alluded to, and it will only exist in this physical space for the foreseeable future. This broadcast, the entire Hazel, is, if I'm doing my job right, a digital version of Scarecrow's perceived mission statement to foster an inherent love of discovery in audiences that are increasingly conditioned toward the media that gets served to them directly. I'd be heartbroken to see this place shut its doors at the hands of the city's ever-inflating rent prices, which is why I'm throwing together a little 2-day fundraiser stream on my Twitch page linked below. The event starts Tuesday, the 8th of October 2024, which is exactly a week after this video premieres to the minute. Gonna play some games, watch some movies, etc. when mods aren't looking. Really looking forward to it. It's been exciting to plan, and those watching after the fact, archives of this stream should be available on my second channel, link from my page. I am also excited for Saturday the 19th of October, which is Video Store Day. Probably so designated by a consortium of video rental joints when there were enough of them to consort. Scarecrow hosts a day-long in-store event for Video Store Day, and it obviously holds additional importance this year. Gosh willing, I'll be there. Just note that I am a very shy woman. Handle me with care. Lastly, I've heard a lot of folks say something to the effect of, when I visit Seattle, Scarecrow's high on my itinerary. So if you're not able to make it to the stream or aren't in the area, you can route your donations directly to Scarecrow from their website, which is linked in the description, or become a member for some cute little perks. I'm sure there are all manner of secret famous people who watch my videos. Grimes, if you're watching this, you better hit their donation page. Okay, thanks. See, here's what I'm talking about. They've got the woefully, pathetically misguided feat of willpower that is Dude Gizzardo. I get requests to cover this one pretty often, actually. What you are seeing is a real scene from this 1989 OVA. Its 60-minute runtime seriously contains 40 minutes of airplane stock footage. 3-minute anime sequence, 9-minute airplane sequence. Anime, airplane. Anime, airplane. Airplane, and the narrative it hardly makes an attempt to eke out is of course incoherent, it's ugly, it's boring, the airplane parts are too loud, and okay, that's enough. This is a joke based on a tweet I got like a couple years ago about a dream someone had about a video of mine that I couldn't actually find when I went looking, so I'm just going off a vague recollection. I continue to think about it all the time, so there's my little tribute to this fake dream anime. I actually posted a picture of this to my Instagram under the guise it was part of a nondescript haul I picked up, and not a single person said anything about it. That really made me happy. Oh, also, the anime footage is from an OVA called Vampire Wars that I admittedly haven't seen outside of scrubbing through it for this video, but it seems to be some kind of Michael Mann pastiche. Can you see what I mean? Okay, here's a bunch of rapid fire ones I like but don't want to cover in any depth. Dedetoko Princess is the breed of 90s OVA where every single female character, no matter how briefly they appear, is nearly impossibly beautiful. Your mental image of a fantasy OVA trope demiglace distilled to perfection. It's got a bimbo princess with a bottomless appetite, magical girl transformations, a green-haired fairy, a dictatrix, she looks familiar, a girl who fights with gachapon capsules full of cute girls, and a buff dude in a blue tunic who wears a bandana. The essentials. Based on a PC-98 game entitled the same kind of nonsense word salad people attribute to Markov chains, Jewel Bem Hunter Lime delights with perhaps the most perfect anime girl design of all time, courtesy of one Otsuko Nakajima, who, if you're around my age and are watching this video, almost certainly irrevocably shaped your taste in women by adapting the cast of Rumiko Takahashi's Ranma 1/2 for television. Ruin Explorers has a fantastic first episode, everything you want out of a PH fantasy OVA, starring yet 2 more bickering ontological ideal anime girls. The remaining episodes are pretty boring if I recall, but you might feel otherwise. Charming dub and a lot of impressive cuts. I'd throw in a playlist with the first episode of Lodos War and a few others for an evening with a couple friends in dim lighting. Majo Demo Steady takes anime stuff from 0 to 100 in some glorious ways that are above my pay grade. If you like when Urusei Yatsura gets annoyingly self-reflective and you like its sloppy style, you gotta see this. But what about girls? What about the girls, Hazel? I want something for the girls! Okay, if you insist. Have this. Have Coco Melon for lesbians, you little weirdos. My gift to you is Miyuki-chan in Wonderland. No doubt equally psychophilosophically over my head. Clamp did it all, man. They were on God mode, cooking X 1999 and Ray Earth, and then they decided to cook with poop and make lesbo overtone shoujo Larry David Lab toilet. Shoujo anime has this deep love for Alice in Wonderland AU filler episodes, so I've seen quite a number of adjacent interpretations of the source material. None of them, not the most psychosexual of the bunch, could have prepared me for this thing. It's a scream a minute, so stream of consciousness and its alterations to Carol's original that my brain hardly registers it as Alice in Wonderland. And here I thought it was an accidental double dosage of Adderall on a day I need to go grocery shopping. More girls, you ask. Well, alright. I have insightful things to say about this one, even. Christmas in January, on its face, seems like a sort of forgettable shoujo manga adaptation. I know, don't worry boys, it's got a loose connection to your big robot cartoons, just give me a minute. I hope it's evident that's not me being dismissive of shoujo manga's demographic appeal or whatever, quite the opposite, because Christmas in January is an inverse reminder that a lot of the conventions in moe-boom bishoujo games are taken from shoujo manga. I mean, otaku have been freely adopting elements of girls' comics since the dawn of time, of course, but the specifics can be easy to miss, you know? My mind was honestly kind of blown when I saw Mercury Falcon point out that the key house art style is totally a riff on Kumiko Takahashi's Cardcaptor Sakura animation character designs. There's very little connective tissue there to Christmas in January's style, but I kept being reminded of Kanon the entire time, with its snow-dusted setting and idiosyncratic, spunky but damaged heroine and the unwitting man whose job it becomes to heal her heart. Of course, the primary difference between the two is who we're meant to identify with. Yes, Junsho is the point of view character, but the feminine gaze is as present here as it is in any shoujo story worth its salt. And while Key's works are beloved by men and women alike, Air is my favorite and I'm a Kyo girl, for the record, the intentions are decidedly less scrupulous in their protagonist's rehabilitation of these broken-winged baby birds. Of course, shoujo manga hardly shies away from suspect romantic shenanigans either, which is why it comes as a quaint shock that Christmas in January's Mizuki is not only older than she looks, she's older than Junsho. And spoiler, there's not even a romance between them. This guy's got his eye on the prize, man. He takes a squarely, half big brotherly, half paternal place in Mizuki's life, which is cute. Mizuki's emotive voice helps make up for the OVA's spare presentation, oscillating between feisty and frigid. That voice is brought to you by none other than legendary seiyuu Megumi Hayashibara. Seriously, if you've seen like any anime, there's a high likelihood you've encountered a character voiced by her. One of her highest profile roles among the ranks of Girl Ranma, Jessie Pokemon, and Faye Valentine is none other than Rei Ayanami. Her stoic performance, titanic in its own right, saddled her with a lifetime supply of appearances in Hideaki Anno's directorial efforts, and we have Christmas in January to thank for that. A couple of years ago, we got an English language translation of Hayashi Baro's book, The Characters Taught Me Everything, which chronicles her career through the lens of her relationships to the characters she's voiced. It's cute, often a little silly in its adherence to its own title, From Birth to Marriage. When I put it like that, it might sound consistent, but the sound director Shiba actually came up to me partway through the show and gave it to me straight. At this point, one option is for us to switch you out for a male voice actor. What do you think? Do you want to keep going? However, there were still so many things I wanted to experience through Alfred's eyes, so I immediately replied, I want to keep voicing him, without even considering whether doing so was within my abilities. Shiba laughed. Yeah, that figures. He's a duck. I'm sure it'll be fine. There are some solid nuggets of production information for a lot of the shows she was a part of, though. Relevant today, she was surprised to find that her audition for Evangelion landed her a role not as Asuka or Misato like she figured her body of work geared her toward, but as a restrained, muted character who hardly speaks. Ono had seen her in Christmas in January, turns out, and her performance stayed with him.
あなただけね。私のことを愛してくれる人。そして、バカな人。
He's a discerning guy. I think it makes sense that he'd be attuned to the spaces in between. Remember Mizuki not for her capricious moods, but her solemn ones. My mind's impression of her is in the former camp. That funny little trot she does when she suddenly retreats from a scene is particularly memorable and very cute to me. From the mind of Keiko Fukuyama comes Fukuyama Gekijo, an anthology of cute little toss-offs imbued with the artist's god-level adorable style, which should be lighting up the neurons in your brain if you were, like me, a hyper-weirdo Pokemon freak child. In the brief couple years she worked on various Pokemon projects, she helped define a pocket of the era's pocket monster aesthetic. You know those mid-90s Sonic illustrations everyone goes apeshit over? The postcards and trading cards Fukuyama illustrated are Pokemon's equivalent. They are resplendent, totally locking into place the late second generation millennium style of letting all these cute, presumably homeless Pokemon run wild in nondescript hamlets and meadows and beaches. See also those Pikachu shorts they'd play before the movies. These placid tableaus make me feel so tender they're genuinely hard to look at. Oh, to be a little Igglybuff gathering a drink of water from a leaf. Oh, to be eating a watermelon baby Togepi. Oh, to be a Pikachu harvesting mushrooms. I want to stroll along a field of sunflowers with an Oddish. I want to set off a Bulbasaur firework. I want to help set a picnic table with a Chansey. I want my portrait drawn by Smeargle. Look at how happy it made this Meowth. That could fix me. Are they blindfolding him so they can beat him to death? I've talked before about how the ancillary elements of early video games are crucial for filling out their necessarily limited worlds. But suffice to say, for all the kids who pictured little terrariums inside of Pokeballs, how many stopped to consider how Pokemon brush their teeth? Or that they need to brush their teeth? And see, Psyduck is a platypus confirmed. Ducks wouldn't need to use shampoo. Christ, shit, okay. I'm straying too far from the main path. Fukuyama's career runs pretty deep. She worked on a whole bunch of 80s miscellany as her profile gradually rose, working with small imprints and animation houses and larger scale publications alike. And by the end of the decade, she was an assistant to Rumiko Takahashi, and Hayao Miyazaki's legendary autobio, Starting Point. Yeah, I'm sorry, there's 2 sections where I read books to you in a row. It just made the most sense to put these 2 together. You can find pitches for a whole assortment of productions, some produced, some not. May 1990 saw a proposal made for a television adaptation of Fukuyama's manga Tokyo Story. Ugh, there are too many things with that name already. The write-up's quite brief, unless there's more that was omitted, but what's there hones in on the manga's post-earthquake, pre-World War II setting as a means of reconnecting with the Taisho era and processing the successive blows the country took during its Showa era. But there's a part that confused me, maybe someone can lend a hand. An unofficial fan page cited by multiple sources states that the pitch wasn't pursued because it was deemed unsuitable for modern times. But I'm struggling to find anything about that. That logic is a little hard to follow considering Tokyo Story was still running in 1990, and its antiquity was built into the appeal. But maybe that was part of the problem, difficulty shopping a story set in the 20s around to stations, that's my guess. Although I do find it odd it was envisioned not as a film but a TV anime, which remained an untouched frontier for another 30 some odd years. And that's not even to mention that World Masterpiece Theater would continue to run through the rest of that decade. Without having read Fukuyama's original, I imagine Miyazaki's pitch sort of extrapolates on what to Tokyo Story is mostly set dressing, sort of scanning the text for something he connects to. So I find it funny that shortly after the pitch was made, Fukuyama Gekijo would be released. An OVA whose only concern is cute. You know I love the range. If you know her exclusively for Pokemon, you've probably never seen her humans who maintain that universal appeal her art carries. She shares some of Izumi Takemoto's swag, he's one of my favorites. This is a dead simple OVA, no major wow factor, not dialogue driven, definitely for children. It's yet another vibes-based piece. If I can admit, I wrote this paragraph while watching. There is a smile on my face the whole time. Everything is stylized for maximum awe. The bunnies with their little red eyes and all the cute kids made me feel profoundly maternal, but like, it's impressive a wonky little dinosaur in this Flintstones pastiche is as cute as it is. My favorite section alongside the little girl's song and dance number, yes girly, fuck it up, was the origami section for its novelty factor. Watching it transition back to animation was a delightful surprise. The section's over now. Next!
Hey kid, you looking for that hard shit? That not Pokemon shit? Need to impress your older cousin with a knife collection? You ever heard of Violence Jack?
Fuck, never mind, I'm going back to the last one. I just gotta talk through these interchangeably. They must be watched sequentially, in one sitting, and in a fevered state of some kind or another. Your brain needs to blend them together into their own greatest hits collection. I didn't even have subs on these bad boys and just went in raw, and that of course further roils the soup they've been reduced to in my memory. These things are truly sights to behold, in that how did nobody stop them from doing this way? Those of you with minimal exposure to Go Nagai should tread with caution when in the presence of VHS copies. This is probably an illusion people make about these kinds of things all the time, but it's all one big aristocrat's joke. Like it's operating from a render farm built to run 10,000 simultaneous automated banned on Club Penguin any percent speedruns. It's all you expect and want from something called Violence Jack that has a premise that hinges on the word hellquake.
I'm the one with the antenna.
All the internal organs, all the philias, all the like saying fuck and poop in the same sentence. Childish and grotesque in equal measure, totally gloriously ugly and reprehensible, but also mostly a little boring to me. But I don't know, I'm not trying to act like the cool kid who brags about stealing her big brother's August Underground DVDs. The knob gets cranked to 10 pretty much immediately and stays there the whole way through, so none of its transgressions could possibly disturb me any more than any other. These days, I really feel the classic if you play quiet sometimes, the loud parts will have more impact mentality. I know this is a very easy criticism to make for someone of my generation, image trained on LimeWire, Jarman, flip phone, blue, waffle, lemon party, school computer, desktop background, as if in preparation for this very moment. And of course, to me, the beauty of a lot of Nagai's works is that everything he makes is a deadline-wary stream of consciousness secreted exclusively from his id. So there's little point in torturing yourself trying to discern what themes or messaging are driving all the sex and violence and sexual violence and violent sex. In fact, that aristocrat's illusion is a little fallacious. Violence Jack is certainly not out to get a rise out of or offend you. That's just its natural course. It should just be named Violence Jack Off. I guess it's about time I get to this one. Say it with me. What is the first OVA? Short answer, Mamoru Oshii Hisayuki Toriyumi Dalos, December 16th, 1983, but I'm sorry, I don't have Mamoru Oshii spaceman antics in me right now. So allow me to distract you with the long answer. The Green Cat, a minor Tezuka joint produced as part of the Lion Books experimental anime series. Check out Sapphire's Beavis and Butthead chin. A lot of places list October 10th, 1983 as its release date. There lies a bizarre fine print. That's its completion date, not the time of its release. What's weird is we do know the release date. In 1989, it was dumped onto the video market after years toiling to get a TV movie deal, which makes Dalos the first OVA to hit store shelves. I don't know, maybe still completed before the Green Cat, too. Tezuka Ephemera is more my speed today, and the Green Cat is weird as shit and very silly, so let's look at the Green Cat. Another feline OVA with body horror, our proto-Illumination Onceler is manipulated from birth by his green cat to be the most successful man in the universe, with nefarious consequences. The Midsummer-esque scattered bursts of extreme violence are consistently funny, but you have to be down for the cute little kitty cat to expectedly get blasted to smithereens before the tape auto-rewinds to not find this at least a little distasteful. You can guess what side I'm on. I haven't seen all the Lion Books OVAs, but I do adore the other one I've seen, Loon Flies into the Wind. Yeah, so did you know that in 1985 Tezuka Pro made an OVA adaptation of that one Dakimakura green text? For real though, it's the story of a lonely, bullied boy who falls in love with a girl in an advertising poster and eventually attempts to track down her identity. It's got this very otherworldly atmosphere, a meandering score and lots of underlighting. Scenes flow together in strange ways. Emotions are dysregulated. It's like the recollection of a dream suddenly coming to you halfway through the day. I've been fascinated by male loneliness probably ever since a high school friend showed me some brony cringe compilation, and I thought to myself halfway through, wait, I don't think this is funny. Something about that recursive relationship it has with the mockery it incites. Romantic love toward fictional, especially 2D characters as well, how those feelings interact with commerce. I mean, this one is pretty obvious. Half my videos are more about otaku than anime. I had to be a Gadget Mouse cult observer to get here. Rather than coming to represent those traits through modern eyes, though, Loon Flies into the Wind is interested in this stuff, too, being a kind of early sympathy for the 2D complex. I guess I'm naturally drawn to things and people that elicit vitriol for bearing the ugly parts of what makes us human. I don't know, I recommend seeing how this thing hits you if any of that sounds interesting. Did I do the mostly talk around the piece of media to create more intrigue about it and avoid patronizing the audience by pointing at things that happen and saying, this is what this means, routine guys? Oh, let's get you out of here. Fuck. These days, the room starts to fill with a Chunibyo nerve agent whenever someone uses the phrase Hazel Core around me. But with that first video I made on OVAs, or really my whole time making videos, my tastes were being rapidly codified at a rate that totally outpaced any other in my adult life. It's a lot of big words to hang on knowing which cartoons I like and how to find them, but in that sense, this channel reflects the maturation of my relationship to art, I guess. That makes me happy. Even if it's hard to know that can't be conveyed on like a YouTube homepage and divorced from context nobody has any reason to care about to begin with. I'm proud of my work on a personal level, but I can't believe I fell for shit like the Mamoru Oshii Christianity thing. What a fool I was. And while I'm on the subject of maturation, I'd like to make an addendum to my recommendation last time of Hiroki Azuma's Database Animals, as I came to find it's an incomplete text without Tamaki Saito's beautiful fighting girl. It's functional big sister text, which I think is a term Saito uses in the book. It's an odd one. Saito is an erudite guy, but sort of confused about otaku. As a psychologist and a big Lacan guy, I thought it was Lacan until like an hour ago. And Azuma's text is confused as well. My recommendation should have been clearer that for as strong as some of its suggestions are, you have to trust your instinct to extrapolate where ideas feel misguided or incomplete. Kind of true to Saito as well. The book in a sense becomes more about its own construction than anything else, which I feel an affinity for. Not that I'm comparing myself too close to a licensed professional, but he identified the parallels between otaku and Henry Darger based on a chance encounter with an exhibit of Darger's work. So validating. I'd thought that before myself and had no idea that comparison has been made since the turn of the millennium. I fear too, in the current state of my hopefully perpetual maturation, I'll always be chasing the high of butt attack Punisher girl Gotemon. Even the sequel disappointed, so there's a big dick God King sex comedy hole in my heart that needs plunging. So how'd these do? Any of them provide even a glimmer of Gotemon? I'll gladly take a Minna Age-chan. Fuck! Results are in, folks. My intuition for funny anime was not too hot this time around. I find a sex comedy's priorities will always land within the Euclidean distance between sex and comedy. When the jokes feel like they're only there as a justification for all the lascivious stuff, I want to tap out. Most of these fall into that category. I don't remember a thing about one of them, couldn't finish another, and
with a gun to my head, I wouldn't try that.
I knew not to get my hopes up for an earlier work by Gotemon mangaka Masakazu Yamaguchi. Not even the Koji Nankei ass opening sequence could intoxicate me into attempting to call the premise female golden boy, golden girl, and my skepticism was rewarded. This thing isn't that good. It's missing that joyful, legitimately creative absurdity that the best sex comedies operate with. The funniest part is that the doorbell to Mai's consultation office is just her left breast. Mellow's a cute little gender bender I watched without subtitles. It's a visual medium, you know? The main thing I remember is this insane zoom effect. Hits all the gruff man having to fill the role of a woman punchlines, nothing original. Cowardly move to change his voice, too. If getting to see hot-blooded men in drag ripping cigs in the women's bathroom brings you to anime, have at it, Tiger. Oh, I also finally caught the 1+2 = Paradise OVA. They played it at the Grand Illusion here in Nah, I'm kidding. I watched it alone in a dark room like everything else. I still think the manga, which I talked briefly about in my video on Minna Age-chan, is hilarious. And a lot of that still comes down to epic gynophobia man-face, whose magic is somehow sorely lost in adaptation. They get the pace wrong too. Each episode covers a volume of the manga, but you can burn through a volume in half, maybe a third the time. The source material is so good at being a sex comedy manga too. Thumbing from page to page to page is a delight. It's always going to be the preferred format. Okay, yeah, shit's dire, it's hentai time, brother. I'm locking it in as tradition for these, I guess. I talked about Urotsuki Doji and La Blue Girl in the last one, easy to nestle into the mise-en-scène of a video framed, confusingly though it was, around the Wild West factor of the VHS era, and this pretenseless, scattershot deluge of unchristianly aberrations. I won't insult you by trying to justify their inclusion here as a matter of historical interest. If you, though, like me, do see jerk-off cartoons primarily as a matter of historical interest, my friend Rex Neighbors of BeyondElectricSheep.com did a delightful panel on the history of North American hentai distribution for Anime Lockdown a while back. Required viewing, ladies and germs. When I caught this live, I was hotly anticipating the utterance of 3 simple words. Excalibur Films, owned and operated by a man whose name is definitely Arthur King, is the adult video distributor behind the Brothers Grimes sublabel of X-rated cartoons. In the late late 80s, 7 early erotic OVAs were dubbed, renamed, and recut for the label as Gonad the Barbarian, Search for Uranus, Offenders of the Universe, Star Trap, that's the only one that kept its Japanese title, and the Pandora Trilogy. These covers perfectly set the stage for their contents. I admit I vacillate between passages that sound like recommendation and passages that sound like demonstration without clear delineation. If that gets you discombobulated, no worries, look at it this way. If, as is natural course, a crude drawing of two goblin brothers yanking it side by side doesn't stir up a cocktail of bemusement and morose curiosity in your amygdala, you're probably not going to find much to enjoy in the Playboy comic strip level execution on already highly objectionable content, and you can move on, freed. And if you're already on the other side of those tracks, you've no use for me to begin with. Oh wait, this is just their feet. But me, once more my hair is greased and pulled back into a ponytail. I found the accosting demonstrations of a hairy-chested and permanently sweaty type of vintage sleeves presented in the deeply emasculated, by their own admission, otaku bishoujo fantasy compelling. Like, what a double whammy. That being said, there are like 3 good moments across all of them.
And besides that, I'm at the end of my lunar cycle. I'm all bloated and the cramps. Just relax. You'll feel much better once you've had a vegetable with a hot piece of meat. That's disgusting. I'm talking about dinner. Oh, okay.
And the rest is dull as shit. Done on the cheap without referencing the original script once, likely.
Pussy! Pussy L'Amour!
Who are you?
Leap in Lezies! You mean you don't recognize me? I'm your friend, Princess
Borrowing
Lemmy.
scores from other anime in the absence of the originals, looping already plain animation to fill time, and creating continuity between OVAs that were not only unrelated but produced by totally different studios.
Mark Starkiller?
Mark Starkiller.
The material they had access to, though, was fully uncensored, which is novel. My brain couldn't quite compute. Not used to seeing that. It just looks weird. But anyway, if left unedited, this could have been even more faithful to the finished anime than its Japanese VHS counterpart. In a scope greater than the import and distribution of hentai anime across the globe, see also Everest Video, who had unedited hentai tapes on lock in Brazil, porn is always in the front row for new mediums and markets. The anime kind is, of course, no exception. A substantial quantity of releases in the first year or so of the original video animation are pornographic, and sent some interesting, but obviously too fraught for here, ripples through anime's history.
What a beautiful day to be an attractive young woman.
Dude, so true. By the way, they're up on the Internet Archive, but the transfers I use here are DVDs of VHS transfers, or masters, whatever, straight from Scarecrow's indispensable sexploitation room, which is where these relics belong, more so than any other adult anime in there. These X-rated cartoons weren't aimed at America's growing otaku cast, but at the type of guy who parted video store velvet curtains with the authority of Moses parting the Red Sea. Ergo, the shared experience among millennial weebs of being given hentai by a mistaken parent who didn't look closely enough to see the often tiny warnings slapped on the sleeve was not a risk. But the words absolutely not for children will always mean absolutely for children when they're affixed to something on a shelf that's too tall to reach. Edgy, grown-up animation is all but purpose-built for its distant allure in the ever-curious adolescent mind, so even though I don't like the idea one bit, I know they're here, and I think it's about time to proverbially put the kids to sleep by talking about some actually mature anime. By which I mean anime most laypersons under the age of 20 would find unbearably boring. Owning an ironing board anime. Aerating your wine anime. Digging around for OVAs to talk about on the channel and coming across one of these is always fun. Every time my brain goes through the same thought loop of how did this get greenlit, who was the target audience, and how profitable could it have been? And likewise, I can't help but ponder the person who sees on a shelf largely populated by children's cartoons and puerile otaku bullshit something with a cover like this and spends the like 8 billion yen anime tapes cost at the time. Editing Bay Hazel here, I just checked, and this tape retailed at over $100, adjusted for inflation, $117 US. fully accepting the risk it could be literally an advertisement for a happiness cult. I honestly couldn't tell you if those cult tapes were even sold commercially or not. Take that joke with a grain of salt. Okay, let's see if I can talk about these very normal, quiet stories about normal, quiet people doing normal, quiet adult things in a compelling fashion. Let the record show I am a hopeless mark for office ladies. Lord knows I love a working woman, and they make a great conduit for eccentric, neurotic female characters, and of course, snapshot critiques of especially bubble-era work culture. It's also one of just a handful of archetypes adult women get to fall into in the vast majority of anime and manga. And I'm honestly so fucking sick of cartoons about teenagers, you have no idea. My weird fixation on golf has become a fixture of my presence online at this point. A blood debt in my name is surely owed to the unofficial servers keeping Korean golf MMO Pangya alive. And maybe it is growing up a video gamer. I've never played a prefixless game of golf a time in my life, but I find something about it very aesthetically interesting, its rhythms pleasant. But for Non Oyamada, protagonist of 1991's Sweet Spot, there is nothing pleasant about golf. Golf is her life. Knowing what I just said about office ladies, I've gotta admit I'm very disappointed at how little golf there is. Not a lot here beyond the appreciated Kathy-esque gags and witticisms, but known as a riot, exuberantly self-interested and competitive, and just as integral to this OVA's charm, she is adorable. I love original mangaka Yutsuko Chusanji's art, bold and iconographic, made for magazine covers. The lack of any flourishes in the animation works for me for that reason. The focus is on representing Chusanji's style. I'd love to see her work get translated, though she tragically died of cancer super young. I imagine that might complicate the licensing process. Sweet Spot is charming and memorable, but it's got its problems. Too much known buttering up her bosses for upward mobility. Good for her, but when there is golf, the foley is sorely underwhelming. Perhaps my office lady fix will be better sated with OL Kaizo Koza, produced by, no kidding, TMS in 1990. This is based on producer Shukan Gentai magazine's Drop Dead Stupid Idiot Office Lady, a write-in column of office managers bitching about their subordinates, ruh-roh. Bear in mind, this point of origin seems to have been universally forgotten outside its connection to this OVA, and even with that, all I have to go off is an untranslated VHS rip. But it's not hard to picture the Shukan Gendai column having this terribly condescending attitude toward women in the workplace, and the exaggerated shrieking performances. Given by the female cast alone seems to confirm this carries into the OVA. It feels like we're supposed to see these women as no more than capricious girls in a state of arrested development that need constant corralling and correction from their male superiors to be worth employing at all. I worked enough jobs with supervisors who saw everyone below them as incompetent at their first slip-up to find much comedy there. And look, I know this sanctimonious attitude looks real rich coming from Little Miss Keijo enjoyer. Make no mistake, my problem is that OL Kaizo Koza isn't misogynistic enough. Okay, what I mean is, there's no camp. By having their basis in quote-unquote real events told by men in positions of authority, these vignettes can never go broad enough to be parody, and so insidiously hinge on your presupposition that these women are all the same. Like you're supposed to feel schadenfreude watching the shallow veneers they put on fail them, but there's nothing beyond those veneers because they're all the guys writing these accounts see them as. Normally I'd mark something like this off as a bust and not even include it here, but the common salaryman superior's unfiltered perspective can't be found anywhere else in anime, at least to my knowledge. Even in something like Agretzko, which your mind may have went to, the director of accounting likely did not have a hand on the ball in the creative process. And man, there's kind of a dark irony to its release at the precipice of the bubble economy's burst, which would lay bare that nobody in a corporate structure is hot shit but the guys who aren't on anyone else's payroll. And to titrate off the office lady detour, the unreasonably difficult to web search 100% is up next. Not about an office lady, but a weather woman. Close enough. I'm playing on nightmare difficulty mode here. It's totally untranslated, barely extant, nobody cares about it, and it's dull as bricks and just as hard to talk about. A story of a young woman breaking into the world of newscasting and the challenges that follow. Protagonist Chan is cute, and I'm sure if I could understand the thing, I'd find some depth to the cast and narrative. Some anime are more fun to watch without subtitles than others. I like very visually driven stories, and I like terribly plain stories, but one is clearly preferable in the absence of language. It should have been more like To Die For. Kenshi Hirokane's manga, Hello Hari Nezumi, Hello Hedgehog, ran for 24 volumes through the 80s. It's an episodic private detective John, following a mussy-headed, baby-faced man solving all sorts of little mysteries. When an OVA was produced in '92, a story from the 20th volume was chosen, detailing the protagonist's search for a woman's missing husband, which of course unravels into a far greater case. Central Park released this under the name Domain of Murder, which is hard as shit, perfectly generic but up for grabs. Likewise, this OVA doesn't necessarily have a lot of character, but a regular old mystery is still a good time, although I suspect the dubious insinuations it makes on the 60s Anpo protests will miss Anglo audiences. Woof. I'm not convinced this was the story to pick out of the 200 some odd chapters they had to choose from. It doesn't make a terribly strong case for itself. The central conflict is just the trolley problem with child death, dude. What, that's not just another normal, boring adult thing for you? I think the premise of this video is starting to break down a little. The dub is pretty charming, some lines get nicely punched up.
I'm so wasted!
Both of the times I've watched Blue Butterfly Fish, strangely abbreviated to BB Fish, I've been very, very sleepy on a warm summer night, so its disjointed little float through an island would-be adventure is cast in this widescreen cropped misty glow. Its full summer day structure meanders from summertime beach time sunshine fun to meditative golden hour sunset hues to somber nighttime life in the dream, baby. In a sense, watching it a second time felt just like trying to recall the 10% of it that stuck with me the first time. Does that make sense? So the question lingers, should you watch this? It's very pretty, and hey, equal opportunity event here. Beefcakes and loose tanks, and ladies popping their bikinis off left and right. They've even got something for me in there. A Sony Sports High 8 camera? I didn't even know that existed, holy shit! Chalk-Colored People is surely the quietest of the sponge, containing virtually no spoken dialogue or animation. Opting for direct scans of panels from the manga, this is a vehicle for. And while that format would become all the rage into the aughts, this is a bold choice that makes for a hard sell. The opulent, picturesque island vacation setting and peak late 80s sophistopop soundtrack take charge here. Although they're both acting pretty separate each other, still, they make this thing feel like fucking Wii Sports Resort the anime. All's well. Animation director Kira Keizo has also worked on children's book adaptation Shiba Wanko's Japanese Spirit, and on the Eastern Euro-ass The Restaurant of Many Orders for Echo, the studio formed by animation legend Tadanari Okamoto. Despite his stripes, he takes a chaste hand to Seizo Watase's manga. Many of you have identified this already, I'm sure, but Watase also made Heart Cocktail. Oh, and get this, composers Ken Shima and Teshika Utolo managed to bag Astrid Gilberto, the singer of The Girl from Ipanema. With music at the forefront, I was more dialed in than usual to those credits. Utolo composed for A Piece of Phantasmagoria, Nekojiru on Mitsuhime, which is my #1 most wanted translation, and Helen Keller Monogatari. Meanwhile, Ken Shima did some music for a couple Pokemon shorts, one of which Keiko Fukuyama also worked on, Small Island Man, but mostly scored TV dramas. The only one of any note to me is an anthology of adaptations from mangaka Fumi Simon, who we'll get to in an expectedly roundabout manner right now. I suspect author Kazuo Kamimura might be better known among English-speaking film weirdos than English-speaking anime weirdos. If you don't know him as like a mangaka Jiro Taniguchi or Hitoshi Iwaaki were once assistant distance to. You know him for being one of the 2 minds behind Lady Snowblood, the beloved Meiko Kaji vehicle and primary Kill Bill influence. Kamimura illustrated while Kazuo Koike wrote. That's right, we're back in the 70s manga hole. Kamimura's Dosei Jidai was, alongside Red Colored Elegy, part of an upcropping of early 70s manga that took an intimate and uncompromising look at young adult romance and sexuality in the modern world. I'm sure you can imagine a romance drama by a big Gekiga guy whose near every work was steeped in sexual taboo and blood could never have been on the rails. I eat this shit up! Keeping in mind my baseline affinity for demented 70s bullshit, its constant from page 1 histrionics immediately hit this point of impressionism. The emotions run so intense and are conveyed so intensely, and it's all converted to this momentum that lets the comic operate in a feedback loop between its interior and exterior worlds. I loved what I read. Fantagraphics, drawn in quarterly. Somebody, anybody, get on this thing. Dosei Jidai saw both television and theatrical adaptations alike during its heyday, but went dormant until, in 1990, Fumi Simon cooked up an anthology manga reimagining. The television adaptation of her Tokyo love story was an absolute smash success and defining Heisei-era TV drama, which led to her being heralded as a god of romance. So of course all sorts of her comics were adapted for broadcast. And in 1992, the Shin Dosei Jidai chapter Hawaiian Breeze marked the first time a work of hers was animated. How does Simon, whose finger was on the pulse of the romance, soft melodrama, modernize the dramatic highs of, say, the chapter where a pianist priest who is very upset about his missing finger doinks it to the Mona Lisa? Domestic partnership crisis. The man wants a baby. The lady wants her autonomy. It gets ugly! Let's start from the outside and work our way in. The slow, articulate animation, creative camera work, Xeroxed backgrounds, and muted palette all uphold its icy story of unyielding obsession and mounting romantic incompatibility. The editing is crucial. Each cut feels tense. When things get heated, the editing reacts by increasing in frequency and in abrupt, unpredictable ways. It makes you feel like being stuck in a car with your couple friends when they start actually fighting, whipping your head back and forth between the driver and passenger seat until you start to get carsick and keep your head down and pretend you're somewhere else. This will sound hilarious, but the wicked cookie duster affixed to protagonist Peter's upper lip sets the stage for its tone, I feel. An immediate signal this is about grown-ass adults with grown-ass adult problems. Like, how many anime characters can you think of with mustaches who aren't delinquents or jacked old men? This is a rhetorical question. I promise you don't have to point any out to me. Peter's likable on face, same place as mustaches. His love of children is pure-hearted, and his rapport with neighbor boy Ta-chan is sweet, which is in contrast to the way his noble aspiration cascades into deeply ignoble behavior, which is paralleled by the corroding of its quiet domestic onset. Special props go to Yuriko Yamamoto, who does an amazing job here as secondary protagonist Eri. Her performance helps drive home how distant these characters grow. When she puts on that totally detached affect, my gut sings.
Tadaima.
While it doesn't get anywhere near as salacious as the 70s Dosei Jidai, an opposite approach proves as effective. Its focus honed to a razor-thin edge. Where the original sees the cosmos and its characters' psyches, Hawaiian Breeze meticulously wrings every last drop from the parts of the cast's interiority that tangle together across its watertight 45-minute runtime. I mixed too many metaphors in that sentence. What the fuck? There are certainly cliched elements to its narrative. Its total Hays Code ending is easy to sever from the rest. That boldness in depicting its daunting, messy subject matter is its heart. The motivations and actions of its cast get to be emotionally contextualized, crucially without a moral bias. Nobody is framed as necessarily good or bad people, just people. A sign of respect to an audience that doesn't need to be guided to a conclusion on how to feel. Animation is predisposed to a cinematic gaze in the sense that every detail can be exactly dialed in. That can't not be a subjective process, and in that it bears some of the load for its viewers. Not inherently a bad thing.
いわゆる実写の映像はですね、 ほとんど現実と同じになっちゃってると思うんですよ今。もうあまりにも溢れてるから、その現実の映像をその実写の映像を見てもですね、その中で丁寧に観察なんかしてないと思うんですよ、見る人は。ところがアニメーションにするとですね、観察させられちゃう、書き起こしてるからね、その現実よりはもっとこのなんていうかな、くっきりと浮き上がるんですね、その浮かび上がるんですよ、やってることが。あ、こんなことやってたんだなと、実はということに気がつく機会を提供することになると思うんですね、アニメーションって。
But anime that attempt to take a more deliberately impartial slant are refreshing to me. I'll even say that ending is contextualized by its source material, which highlights a contrast between both versions. Simon's story is a mere 25 pages, so it required beefing up to fill a substantial runtime, and so they beefed it up with sex. I can't decide if I'm surprised or not to find the original is basically asexual. On one hand, I figured Simon's writing would be on the clean side, geared toward large audiences, you know? But on the other, this OVA operates around its sex in my eyes, the kindling for the conflict in an untenable situation. And because that's not on the manga's mind, the reparation of the couple's relationship is much easier to buy. I wonder how different my reaction would have been if I'd imported the manga before watching. So being a choice in adaptation recasts the presence of sex as a push to get a little closer to its place of birth, which of course wrote them into a corner, like the damn title is derived from the climax of the story. There's no changing that. To me, the trade-off is well worth it, but I'm sure you can discern on your own if all that makes it a story for you or not. Guess I'm bound to like anything with a hand injury by broken porcelain scene. Really, this OVA is the essence of this very program, an animated effort I didn't even think to long for until it was right in front of me that opens a door to more art to fall in love with. What illustrates a nightmare version of that must be found in the link in the description. This thing is a legitimate info hazard. I'm doing deliberate dark pattern shit here. Once you make contact, there's no going back. I can barely show you a second of this anime, not even its cover art, and I probably shouldn't even tell you the premise, but I cannot bear this burden alone. Proceed at your own risk, please. Yeah, I don't know, I don't really have an ending in mind. An indelible thank you must be given to the fine folks at Orphan Fansubs, whose prolific translation work, high-quality transfers, and detailed write-ups on forgotten pieces of anime ephemera are instrumental to the breadth of titles I'm able to cover here. And that goes for all the other hardworking people taking on the often thankless task of proliferating anime to the masses. It was very important for me to get this video out on time to promote my Scarecrow fundraiser, and I was lucky to have help from my very lovely and talented friends as my due date edged closer and closer. So a personal thank you goes to the people who helped get me across the finish line. My friend Cybershell for lending his voice, Dem for lending his voice and likeness, Linus for her art for that little sight gag, Ivy for setting up a website so I have a better place to host my works cited and songs used, Tim for normalizing all of the voiceover, and my sister May for helping me shoot the Scarecrow section. I know some of the stuff in here has seen plenty of coverage elsewhere, so I hope you found a little value in my perspective. Also hope you found some new stuff to love from this video. I hope Scarecrow's able to make it to 2025. I had a lot of fun making this video, so thanks for watching. Oh my god, of course I knew that Megami Tensei was a thing before Pokemon. It was a joke.